The dust swirled on the auction block in Enid, Oklahoma Territory, 1889. As Rebecca Turner stood with her head bowed, her once fine dress now stained with the grime of a week's travel. The sun beat down mercilessly on her fair skin while the auctioneer's voice rang out over the crowd of cowboys, ranchers, and drifters. To her left stood a weathered mule, its value seemingly greater than her own in this savage new land. Next up, we've got this healthy mule, perfect for farm work. And beside him, a woman claims she's a teacher from Boston. Says she can read, write, and do figures. Bidding starts at $20 for the mule, $15 for the woman. Rebecca flinched at the humiliation. 3 weeks ago, she had been teaching at her respectable girls' school in Massachusetts. Now, after her father's death revealed his mountain of debts, she was being sold as an indentured servant in this dusty frontier town. The crowd began shouting bids for the mule, but only a few rough-looking men were eyeing Rebecca with interest that made her skin crawl. One man smelling of whiskey bid $12. "Is that all she's worth?" called the auctioneer. A fine, educated woman for just $12. From the back of the crowd, a tall figure pushed forward. As he approached, the crowd parted. Rebecca glimpsed a rugged man with sun-bronzed skin and piercing blue eyes beneath the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat. "I'll pay off her debt," said the man, his voice deep and steady. "Whatever it is." The auctioneer squinted. "That'd be $123, Mr. Anderson." "More than she's worth, I reckon." The stranger pulled a leather pouch from his vest and counted out gold coins. "You're wrong about that," he said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "She's worth more than gold to me." Rebecca stared at him, bewildered. She'd never seen this man before in her life. "Name's Bryce Anderson," he said quietly as he approached her after concluding the transaction. "I own the Double Ranch about 10 miles out of town. I'm not buying you, I'm paying your debt. You'll be free to go wherever you want once we're clear of town." "Why would you do that for a stranger?" Rebecca whispered, still trembling. "No decent woman should be sold beside a mule," he replied, helping her onto his wagon. "Besides, my sister runs a school on my property. She's been looking for a teacher to help. The choice is yours, but there's honest work if you want it." As they pulled away from town, Rebecca glanced back at the auction block. A choice. Something she hadn't had in weeks. She looked at the strong profile of Bryce Anderson and wondered what kind of man spent a fortune to free a woman he didn't know. The Double Ranch sprawled across the Oklahoma prairie, a collection of well-maintained buildings nestled against a backdrop of rolling hills. Rebecca marveled at the order amid the wilderness: a large main house, a bunkhouse for the ranch hands, a barn, and what appeared to be a small schoolhouse set apart from the rest. "My father started with nothing," Bryce explained as he guided the wagon toward the main house. "Built this place up from a one-room shack 20 years ago. After he and my mother passed, my sister Amanda and I kept it going." "It's impressive," Rebecca said sincerely. "I didn't expect something so civilized out here." A hint of a smile touched Bryce's lips. "We try." "Not everyone in these parts is a barbarian, despite what they might have shown you in town." A slender woman with the same striking blue eyes as Bryce emerged from the main house, wiping her hands on her apron. "Amanda," Bryce called. "This is Miss Rebecca Turner from Boston." "Miss Turner, my sister Amanda." Amanda's face lit up. "The teacher." "Oh, Bryce, you found one." She hurried forward, taking Rebecca's hands. "We have 15 children who come here for schooling. Ranch hands kids and children from the nearby farms. Our last teacher left to get married 6 months ago." Rebecca glanced at Bryce, who shrugged. "I told Miss Turner she has a choice. She can stay and teach, or I'll give her enough money to head back east if that's what she wants." "Oh, but you must stay," Amanda implored. "Just for a little while at least. The children need education, and it's so hard to find qualified teachers willing to come out here." Rebecca hesitated. She had no home to return to in Boston and no prospects. "I suppose I could stay temporarily until you find someone more permanent." Relief washed over Amanda's face. "Wonderful. I'll show you to your room. You'll have your own space in the main house with us." As Amanda led her away, Rebecca glanced back at Bryce, who was unloading supplies from the wagon. He looked up, catching her gaze, and for a moment, something passed between them, an acknowledgement, perhaps, of the strange circumstances that had brought them together. That evening, after a hearty dinner that reminded Rebecca how long it had been since she'd eaten properly, she sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the prairie in gold and crimson. Bryce joined her, offering a cup of coffee. "Thank you," she said, accepting it. "Not just for this, but for today. I still don't understand why you did it." Bryce leaned against the porch railing. "My mother was brought west as a mail-order bride. The man who ordered her was not who he claimed to be. My father found her in a similar situation to yours, being auctioned off to cover the man's debts." He gazed out at the horizon. "He always taught us that people aren't property, no matter what others might think. Your father sounds like a good man." He was. Bryce's voice carried a hint of pride. "Built everything you see with his own hands and never once turned away someone in need." Rebecca sipped her coffee. "And now you're following in his footsteps." "Trying to," he admitted, "not always successfully." The honesty in his voice touched something in Rebecca. This rough land bred rough men, but there was a gentleness in Bryce Anderson that belied his weathered exterior. "The schoolhouse needs some repairs," he continued. "I'll fix it up before the children return next week. If there's anything special you need for teaching, just let me know." "Actually," Rebecca said, her mind already turning to possibilities, "I do have some ideas." The next morning, Rebecca woke to the sounds of the ranch coming to life, men calling to each other, horses neighing, the distant lowing of cattle. After dressing in one of the simple but clean dresses Amanda had provided, she made her way to the schoolhouse. The building was small but sturdy, with rows of rough-hewn benches facing a teacher's desk. Shelves lined one wall, containing a modest collection of books. Rebecca ran her fingers along the spine's basic primers, a few novels, a Bible, and some history texts. Not much, but a start. She heard footsteps and turned to find Bryce at the doorway, tools in hand. "Amanda said you'd be here," he said. "I'm going to fix that leak in the roof and the loose floorboards." "Thank you," Rebecca replied. "The children, what ages are they?" "From 6 to 16, he answered, setting down his toolbox. "Most have had some schooling, but it's been inconsistent. The oldest boy, Will Parker, is sharp as a tack. Could probably run this ranch better than me if he wanted to." Rebecca smiled. "I'm looking forward to meeting them. In Boston, I taught young ladies proper etiquette and literature, but I suspect these children will need more practical knowledge." "Arithmetic for sure," Bryce said, testing a loose board with his boot. "Reading, writing, history of our country might be good too. Most of these kids will never leave Oklahoma, but they should know where they came from." As Bryce worked on the repairs, Rebecca took inventory of the supplies and began planning lessons. They worked in comfortable silence, occasionally breaking it to ask a question or share an observation. By midday, Rebecca was surprised by how much they had accomplished together. Amanda brought them lunch sandwiches and lemonade, and the three sat on the schoolhouse steps, discussing the upcoming term. "The Parker children walk 3 miles each way," Amanda explained. "The Johnsons ride in on horseback. They're from the next ranch over. The rest are mostly children of our hands, so they live here on the property. I'll need to adapt the lessons to different levels," Rebecca mused. "Perhaps the older children can help teach the younger ones sometimes." Bryce nodded. "Good idea. Teaches responsibility." "Exactly what I was thinking," Rebecca said, surprised by how quickly he understood her educational philosophy. Amanda glanced between them with a knowing smile. "You two seem to be on the same page about a lot of things." Rebecca felt a blush rising to her cheeks and quickly changed the subject. "Tell me about the families. It will help me understand the children better." As Amanda described the various families whose children attended the school, Rebecca couldn't help noticing how Bryce watched her, not in the predatory way the men at the auction had, but with curiosity and something else she couldn't quite name. Interest, perhaps, or admiration. Whatever it was, it sent a flutter through her chest that both alarmed and intrigued her. The days passed quickly as Rebecca prepared for the school term. She created lesson plans, organized the schoolroom, and with Bryce's help, built a new bookshelf to hold the additional books he had ordered from back east. Each evening, they would sit on the porch after dinner, talking about the day's work and sharing stories of their pasts. Rebecca learned that Bryce had fought briefly in skirmishes against cattle rustlers, had once traveled as far as San Francisco, and could recite Shakespeare from memory, a skill taught by his educated mother. In turn, she told him about Boston, her love of literature, and her dreams of someday writing stories of her own. "You should write about this place," he suggested one evening. "The territory is changing fast. Someone ought to capture it before it's gone." "Perhaps I will," she replied, touched by his encouragement. The morning the children were to arrive, Rebecca woke with nervous energy. She dressed carefully in her most presentable dress, one Amanda had altered to better fit her, and pinned her hair neatly. As she walked to the schoolhouse, she spotted Bryce waiting by the door, holding something behind his back. "Good morning," she called. "Are you here to wish the teacher luck on her first day?" He smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face. "That, and to give you this." He brought his hands forward, revealing a small brass bell. "Every proper school needs a bell to call the children in." Rebecca took it, running her fingers over the smooth metal. "It's perfect, thank you." Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and Rebecca felt that same flutter in her chest. Bryce's eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary before he cleared his throat. "I should get to work. The south pasture needs attention." He tipped his hat. "Good luck, Miss Turner." "Rebecca," she said impulsively. "When it's just us, you can call me Rebecca." A slow smile spread across his face. "Rebecca," he repeated, as if testing the way it sounded, "and I'm Bryce, not Mr. Anderson." With that, he turned and walked toward the stables, leaving Rebecca with the weight of the bell in her hands and the memory of his smile in her mind. The first weeks of school passed in a blur of activity. Rebecca found herself rising to the challenge of teaching children of various ages and abilities. The Parker boy, Will, proved to be as intelligent as Bryce had claimed, while his younger sister Emily had a gift for storytelling. The Johnson twins were excellent with numbers, and little Sarah Miller, daughter of one of the ranch hands, had the sweetest singing voice Rebecca had ever heard. Each evening, Rebecca would share the day's events with Bryce and Amanda over dinner, her face animated as she described the children's progress or amusing incidents. Bryce listened attentively, occasionally offering suggestions for handling certain situations or resources he could acquire for the school. One Saturday morning, about a month after Rebecca's arrival, Bryce invited her to ride out with him to check the herd. Amanda gave her a knowing smile as she helped Rebecca into a riding skirt she'd loaned her. "My brother doesn't often invite company when he's working," Amanda commented. Rebecca tried to ignore the implication. "He probably just wants to show me more of the ranch so I can incorporate local knowledge into my lessons." Amanda laughed. "If that's what you need to tell yourself, Rebecca." The morning was perfect for riding clear and cool, with the promise of warmth later in the day. Rebecca had ridden in Boston, but never across open country like this. Bryce kept a careful pace, letting her adjust to the gentle mare he'd chosen for her. "She's well behaved," Rebecca commented, patting the horse's neck. "What's her name?" "Penny," Bryce replied, "for her copper color. She was the first foal born here after I took over the ranch." As they rode, Bryce pointed out landmarks and shared the history of the land. They crested a hill, and Rebecca gasped at the view, a vast expanse of grassland stretching to the horizon, dotted with the dark shapes of cattle. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "This is my favorite spot on the entire ranch," Bryce admitted. "When things get difficult, I come here to remind myself what I'm working for." They dismounted to let the horses rest, and Bryce spread a blanket he'd brought for them to sit on. He unpacked a simple lunch: bread, cheese, and apples, which they shared as they looked out over the land. "You've built something remarkable here," Rebecca said. "You should be proud." "Most of it was my father's work," Bryce replied, his voice humble. "I'm just trying to preserve it and maybe improve it a little." "Don't diminish your contributions," Rebecca insisted. "Amanda has told me how you've expanded the herd, built the school, and made peace with neighboring ranchers who used to feud with your father." Bryce looked at her with surprise. "She's been telling tales, I see." "Good ones," Rebecca assured him. "She's proud of you." A comfortable silence fell between them as they ate. Rebecca found herself studying Bryce's profile, the strong line of his jaw, now clean-shaven for her benefit, she suspected. The way the sun brought out golden highlights in his brown hair, the tiny crinkles at the corners of his eyes that appeared when he smiled. "What?" he asked, catching her staring. Rebecca blushed. "I was just thinking how different my life would be if you hadn't been in Enid that day." His expression grew serious. "I almost wasn't. I'd planned to go the following week, but we finished the fence repairs early." "Some might call it chance, but I think it was something else." "Providence?" Rebecca suggested. "Maybe." Bryce hesitated, then reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear that had escaped her pins. "I'm grateful for it, whatever it was." His touch was gentle, and Rebecca found herself leaning slightly toward him. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her, but instead he stood and offered his hand to help her up. "We should check on the herd before heading back," he said, though his eyes lingered on her face. As they rode toward the cattle, Rebecca felt a mix of disappointment and anticipation. Something was changing between them, evolving from gratitude and friendship into something deeper. The realization both thrilled and frightened her. October brought cooler weather and the harvest festival in Enid. Bryce invited Rebecca to attend with him and Amanda, warning her that it would be her first public appearance in town since the auction. "People will talk," he cautioned. "Are you prepared for that?" Rebecca lifted her chin. "I've done nothing to be ashamed of. Besides, I'm curious to see the town properly, not just from an auction block." The festival transformed Enid's main street into a lively celebration with tables of food, fiddle music, and dancing. Rebecca felt eyes following her as she walked between Bryce and Amanda, but the presence of the respected Anderson siblings seemed to discourage any direct confrontation. Amanda soon left to speak with friends, leaving Rebecca and Bryce alone. He offered his arm, which she took gratefully. "Would you like something to drink?" he asked, guiding her through the crowd. "Yes, please," she replied, glancing around at the colorful decorations and smiling faces. As they passed a group of women, Rebecca overheard snippets of their whispered conversation. "The woman who was sold with Perkins' old mule. Living out at the Anderson place. Probably warming his bed." Rebecca's steps faltered, and Bryce's hand immediately covered hers where it rested on his arm. "Ignore them," he murmured. "Small minds always look for the worst explanations." "It's not just that," Rebecca admitted quietly. "It's knowing that in their eyes I'll always be that woman from the auction block." Bryce stopped walking and turned to face her. "Then perhaps we should give them something else to remember you by." Before Rebecca could ask what he meant, he led her to the dance floor where couples were gathering for a Virginia reel. With a gallant bow, he extended his hand. "Miss Turner, would you honor me with this dance?" Rebecca hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. "I would be delighted, Mr. Anderson." The music began, and they joined the line of dancers. Rebecca moved with natural grace, her years of dance lessons in Boston serving her well. Bryce proved to be a surprisingly adept partner, guiding her through the figures with confident hands. As they progressed down the line, people stopped to watch them, the striking rancher and the Eastern schoolteacher, moving in perfect harmony. When the dance ended, applause rippled through the crowd. Bryce kept hold of Rebecca's hand, his eyes never leaving hers. For that moment, the whispers faded away, replaced by a new narrative, one of respect and possibility. The evening continued with more dancing and conversation with the friendlier townspeople. Amanda introduced Rebecca to the local dressmaker, the minister's wife, and several parents whose children might join her school. By the time they headed back to the ranch, Rebecca felt a tentative acceptance from at least part of the community. On the ride home, with Amanda dozing in the back of the wagon, Bryce spoke softly to Rebecca. "You changed some minds tonight." "I hope so," she replied. "Though I suspect others will never see past what they witnessed at that auction." "Their loss," Bryce said firmly. "I've known you for 2 months now, Rebecca, and I can say with certainty that you're one of the strongest, most dignified people I've ever met. Anyone who can't see that isn't worth your concern." His words warmed her more than the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Thank you for giving me the chance to prove myself." "You never needed to prove anything to me," he said, his voice dropping lower. "From the moment I saw you standing there with your head high despite everything, I knew you were someone special." Under the cover of darkness, with only the stars as witnesses, Rebecca allowed herself to lean slightly against his solid shoulder. He shifted the reins to one hand, his other arm coming around her in a protective embrace that felt more right than anything had in a very long time. As autumn deepened, the relationship between Bryce and Rebecca continued to evolve. They sought each other's company during free moments, Rebecca joining Bryce for evening rides, Bryce stopping by the schoolhouse to listen to the children's recitations. Their conversations grew deeper, touching on hopes and fears, dreams and disappointments. The schoolchildren noticed, of course. Will Parker solemnly informed Rebecca one day that "Mr. Anderson looks at you like my pa looks at my ma," causing her to blush furiously, and the other children to dissolve into giggles. Amanda noticed too, watching their interactions with approval but saying little. She did, however, enlist Rebecca's help in preparations for Thanksgiving, teaching her family recipes and traditions. "Our mother always made the entire ranch feel like family on Thanksgiving," Amanda explained as they prepared pies in the kitchen. "Everyone ate together, hands, neighbors, anyone who didn't have a place to go." "It sounds wonderful," Rebecca said, carefully crimping the edge of a pumpkin pie. "It was," Amanda agreed. "Bryce has kept the tradition alive, though he doesn't say much about it. He's like that, shows his feelings through actions more than words." Rebecca thought about the small kindnesses Bryce regularly performed, leaving wildflowers on her desk, carving a special box for her chalk and pens, riding out in a rainstorm to escort the Parker children home safely. "I've noticed," she said softly. Amanda gave her a measuring look. "He cares for you, Rebecca, more than I've seen him care for anyone." Rebecca's hands stilled. "And how do you feel about that, about me?" "When Bryce told me he'd paid a debt to free a woman being sold at auction, I thought he'd lost his mind," Amanda admitted with a chuckle. "But when I saw you step down from that wagon, so dignified despite everything you'd been through, I understood. And now, seeing how you've brought life back to this ranch, to the school, to my brother." She squeezed Rebecca's flour-dusted hand. "You're already family to me." Thanksgiving Day dawned clear and cold. The main house buzzed with activity as ranch hands helped set up long tables in the dining room and on the covered porch. By noon, nearly 40 people had gathered, families from neighboring ranches, the hands and their families, even a few people from town, including the minister and his wife. Rebecca found herself swept up in the warmth of the celebration. She helped serve food, chatted with guests, and supervised the children's games. Throughout it all, her gaze frequently sought out Bryce, who moved among his guests with quiet authority, ensuring everyone felt welcome. As evening approached and the guests began to depart, Rebecca helped Amanda clean up while Bryce saw people off. When the last wagon pulled away, he returned to the house, looking tired but content. "That was a fine Thanksgiving," Amanda declared, drying her hands on her apron. "Mother would have been proud." She yawned dramatically. "I'm exhausted. I think I'll turn in early." She gave Rebecca a meaningful glance before heading upstairs. Alone in the kitchen, Rebecca and Bryce worked together to finish putting away the last of the food. Their movements were comfortable, synchronized after months of sharing space. "Thank you for your help today," Bryce said, hanging the dish towel to dry. Everyone was impressed by our schoolteacher. I enjoyed it, Rebecca replied honestly. It reminded me of holidays at home when my parents were alive, that sense of belonging. Bryce stepped closer. Do you feel that here, like you belong? Rebecca met his gaze. Yes, she whispered, more than I ever expected to. Rebecca, Bryce began, then hesitated. There's something I've been wanting to tell you, she waited, her heart beating rapidly. That day in Enid, when I said you were worth more than gold to me, I meant it, even then, without knowing you, and now that I do know you. He took her hands in his. You're worth everything to me. Rebecca felt tears gathering in her eyes. Bryce, let me finish, he said gently. I know your life here isn't what you planned. You're educated, refined, you could have a different life back east. I wouldn't blame you for wanting that. But if you could see a future here with me, I promise to spend every day making sure you never regret it. Are you asking me to stay? Rebecca whispered. I'm asking you to marry me, Bryce clarified, his voice rough with emotion, to be my wife, my partner in everything. To build a life together here. Joy burst through Rebecca's chest like sunlight through clouds. Yes, she said without hesitation. Yes, Bryce Anderson, I will marry you. His face transformed with happiness as he pulled her into his arms. Their first kiss was tender, a promise sealed beneath the rafters of the home they would share. When they finally parted, Bryce pressed his forehead to hers. I love you, he said simply. And I love you, she replied, the words feeling natural and right. A sound from the doorway made them turn. Amanda stood there, beaming. I forgot my. Oh, never mind what I forgot. Did I just hear what I think I heard? Bryce laughed, keeping his arm around Rebecca. If you think you heard me asking Rebecca to marry me and her saying yes, then you heard correctly. Amanda rushed forward to embrace them both. Finally, I was beginning to think I'd have to lock you two in the root cellar until you declared yourselves. The three of them laughed together, and Rebecca felt the last piece of her heart fall into place. From the depths of humiliation on that auction block to this moment of perfect happiness, the journey had been unexpected but led exactly where she was meant to be. Rebecca and Bryce were married on Christmas Eve in the ranch house, decorated with evergreen boughs and candles. The minister from Enid performed the ceremony, with Amanda as Rebecca's attendant and Will Parker proudly standing up with Bryce. The schoolchildren sang carols, and the ranch hands and their families filled the house with joyful witnesses. Rebecca wore a dress of deep blue velvet that Amanda had helped her make, with lace from Bryce's mother's wedding gown incorporated into the collar and cuffs. Bryce, usually seen in working clothes, cut a handsome figure in a new black suit, his eyes never leaving Rebecca as she walked toward him on the arm of Frank Miller, the ranch foreman who had offered to give her away. I take this woman to be my wife, Bryce vowed, his voice steady and sure. To cherish and protect, to respect and honor from this day forward. I take this man to be my husband, Rebecca responded, tears of joy shining in her eyes. To support and love, to build a life with from this day forward. Their kiss was met with cheers and applause, followed by a celebration that lasted well into the night. When they finally retired to the master bedroom, now theirs, to share, Bryce gathered Rebecca into his arms. Mrs. Anderson, he murmured against her hair. I like the sound of that, she said, tilting her face up to his. So do I. He kissed her softly. Welcome home, Rebecca, for good this time. Spring came early to the Oklahoma Territory in 1890. The ranch flourished under the combined efforts of Bryce and Rebecca. She continued teaching, but also took on management of the household accounts, revealing a talent for business that complemented Bryce's practical ranching knowledge. On a warm May evening, they sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in spectacular colors. Rebecca's head rested on Bryce's shoulder, his arm wrapped securely around her. I have news, she said softly. Good news, I hope? Bryce asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. Rebecca took his hand and placed it gently over her abdomen. The best kind. We're going to have a baby, Bryce. In November, His breath caught, and when she looked up at his face, she saw wonder in his eyes. "A baby," he repeated, "our child." "Yes," she confirmed, smiling at his amazement. "Dr. Wilson confirmed it yesterday when I went into town." Bryce gathered her close, his touch gentle as if she had suddenly become fragile. "I love you," he whispered fiercely. "Both of you." As they sat entwined in the gathering dusk, Rebecca reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought her here. Sold beside a mule on an auction block, she had found her true value in the eyes of a man who saw beyond circumstance to the person within. From humiliation had come dignity, from desperation, hope, from a chance encounter, enduring love. The baby arrived on a snowy night in late November, a healthy boy they named Benjamin, after Bryce's father. As Rebecca held their son in the bedroom she now shared with her husband, with Amanda hovering proudly nearby, she felt the circle of their family complete. "He has your eyes," Bryce said in wonder, gently touching the infant's tiny hand. "And your chin," Rebecca observed. "He's perfect." The years that followed brought more children, twin girls, Charlotte and Grace, born 2 years later, and another son, Samuel, 3 years after that. The school on the double, a ranch, grew as more families settled in the area, eventually requiring a proper schoolhouse in town, where Rebecca taught 3 days a week while Amanda watched the children. Bryce expanded the ranch operations, adding orchards and fields of wheat to the cattle business. They weathered droughts and blizzards, market fluctuations and political changes as Oklahoma moved toward statehood. Through it all, their partnership remained solid, equal parts respect, friendship, and abiding love. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Bryce gave Rebecca a leather-bound book. She opened it to find blank pages. "For your stories," he explained. "You always said you wanted to write about this place, about the territory. I think it's time." Touched by his remembrance of a dream she'd mentioned years ago, Rebecca began writing in the evenings after the children were asleep. She wrote about the land, the people, the challenges and triumphs of frontier life. But mostly, she wrote their story of a woman sold beside a mule and the man who saw her true worth. The book was published in 1905, the year Oklahoma was preparing for statehood. "Worth More Than Gold" became popular throughout the region, its tale of redemption and love resonating with readers who had their own frontier stories. On a warm summer evening in 1910, 20 years after they first met, Bryce and Rebecca sat on the same porch swing, watching their children play in the yard. Benjamin, now nearly 20, was attending college back east but home for the summer. The twins, 18 and full of life, were helping 15-year-old Samuel build a fort for the younger children of the ranch hands. "Do you ever regret it?" Bryce asked suddenly, his hair now streaked with silver but his eyes as keen as ever. "Regret what?" Rebecca asked, though she knew what he meant, "Staying here, choosing this life over what you might have had." Rebecca took his weathered hand in hers, running her thumb over the gold band he'd placed there 2 decades ago. "Not for a single moment," she said truthfully. "This is where I belong. With you, with our family on this land we've shaped together." Bryce's arm tightened around her shoulders. "When I saw you on that auction block, I knew I had to help. I never imagined I was rescuing my own happiness in the process." "We rescued each other," Rebecca corrected gently, "and built something neither of us could have created alone." As the sun set over the land they loved, casting long shadows across the prosperous ranch that was their legacy, Rebecca Turner Anderson leaned her head against her husband's shoulder, content in the knowledge that some journeys, no matter how difficult their beginning, lead exactly where they're meant to. In the years that followed, their children grew and started families of their own. Benjamin returned from college to help run the ranch, bringing with him a wife who loved the land as much as his parents did. The twins married local men, one a doctor, one a rancher, and built homes nearby. Samuel became a lawyer, but maintained close ties to the AA, handling its legal affairs. Rebecca and Bryce grew old together, watching grandchildren play in the same yard where their children had played. teaching them the same values of hard work, compassion, and respect for all people regardless of their circumstances. And on quiet evenings, they still sat together on the porch swing, holding hands and watching the sun set over the Oklahoma plains, grateful for the auction that had brought them together and the love that had transformed both their lives.